it feels like yet another wasted season for this Lakers team with LeBron James. Now, if this was any other player in the world, we'd be looking at one championship and saying ultimately the moves made over the last 3 years was well worth it. But this isn't any other player. This is LeBron James, and it feels like another wasted season. And coming on to discuss that from Lakers Nation, Trevor Lane. Trevor, I appreciate the time. What did you feel? What are your feelings about this season? You got to have some sort of feelings about it.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. But yeah, this has been. We've been characterizing it as the worst season ever from the Lakers' perspective, relative to expectations and the game script that we've been seeing play out over and over and over again this season, where the Lakers have looked like they're hanging into a lot of games and then seemingly collapsing in the second half. They've been giving fans a little bit of hope and then finding ways to lose at the end. It's been particularly brutal. So I think it's been from the fan perspective, it's been the worst season that we've seen. Again, they've lost more games than this during previous seasons, but they were expected to be a championship team this season, and they're nowhere close to that, not even making the play-in. And then on top of that, there's no draft pick this year to act as that silver lining, which we've seen in years past. So it's been particularly tough, and like you said, this is another year with LeBron now. 2 years of not making the playoffs with LeBron in purple and gold. 1 year, a first-round playoff exit, and one NBA championship. Not what fans were expecting when LeBron came to LA, but here we are.
Absolutely. Here we are. And one of the things that has come under fire with LeBron James is him not playing due to injury. And we all love and appreciate Kobe. Rest in peace. May he rest in peace. Kobe always talked about playing for the fans, no matter if it was a little tweak here, a little tweak there. And, rightfully so. Maybe LeBron is getting a little bit of that criticism. I mean, the game has changed. We have evolved. We have decided that, players like Kawhi Leonard and LeBron James and Paul George and you name them, they need to take time off during the games or during the season to prolong their career. What do you think of the criticism, comparing Kobe Bryant, who never missed a game no matter the injury, to LeBron James, who tweaked an ankle and said, you know what? We're already out of the season. It doesn't matter anyways.
I mean, I think that LeBron was in a tough situation there. Like, he's in a no-win situation. And I think, Kobe has missed games. We just, looking back, we tend to assume that, he played through everything. And look, he was incredibly tough, and he did play through a lot of things. And we remember him shooting left-handed when he injures his right shoulder and all these sorts of things. And we see him as just this Iron Man, which isn't necessarily accurate. I mean, he definitely missed games. But LeBron, the situation that he was in, if you were looking to criticize him, it was coming. No matter what he did. If he played down the stretch, it was going to be LeBron only cares about his stats. He's just trying to win the scoring title, and that's it. And then if he doesn't play, it's he's quitting on this team. So there's no way to win necessarily in that scenario. I think it just came down to, is it a situation where if he's favoring the ankle, could he be at even if it's a slightly higher risk for a greater injury? And if that was the case, then why have him go into the offseason with perhaps a bigger injury if the games don't matter? Why not just put the ball in the hands of the likes of Austin Reeves and Taylor Horton-Tucker and let them develop and then go from there? And so that, I think that's ultimately the decision that was made. Is it a negative for fans who paid money to see these games and see him play? Yes, absolutely. But ultimately they had a decision to make, either have him play and maybe go for the scoring title this year and give the fans a show, or play it safe and have him sit out the last few games that didn't matter. And they chose the latter.
Honestly, it was a double-edged sword. I 100% agree with you on the fact that, no matter what they decided, the team, LeBron James, ultimately it was going to be criticized. And, one of the things that I will give LeBron James props to, taking care of his health, taking care of the team, and hoping to move forward to win a championship next year is, he was 2 games away from qualifying for this scoring title. And he's not that far away from Joel Embiid. One good game, and he surpasses Joel Embiid. And, that takes selflessness to ultimately decide to put the team before his health or his stats and everything else. And I think maybe we need to look at that. But with being a high profile player like LeBron, it often is a double edged sword. So, one thing I do want to talk about the double edged sword is LeBron, the general manager. Like, what moves, why were they made, and what ultimately led to this disastrous season for the Lakers?
Yeah, I mean, most people will look at it and correctly look at the Russell Westbrook trade, and we've been hearing more and more. We expected, as the season started to come to an end, we would get some stuff coming out in terms of who's really to blame there, what actually went down, and so far everything we've been hearing, that the various anonymous sources leaking information out, has been that it was largely LeBron and Anthony Davis who pushed for the Russell Westbrook trade. And so that's been a big reason why the Lakers have had the struggles they had this season. Now, it's not entirely on just that move. There have been a lot of other things that have gone wrong this season. There's plenty of blame to go around, but I think most people will look at that as being sort of the main catalyst that created some of the issues the Lakers have, not necessarily just on the floor, although the fit on the floor has not worked out. It was always a gamble with Russ whether or not the overall talent would be able to outweigh the fit concerns, and that proved to not be a thing. They weren't able to outweigh that. But also in terms of the salary cap, his contract, Russell Westbrook's contract necessitated a few other moves. The Lakers made a decision, too, with Alex Caruso that they didn't bring him back. So that's on the front office and on ownership for deciding to not spend the money to keep Alex Caruso. But in terms of building out a roster with LeBron, Russell Westbrook, Anthony Davis, these max salaries on the books, it's hard to have the kind of depth that you need, and that has to fall on the shoulders of that Russell Westbrook decision. If you had not done that, you'd have a much deeper roster, and arguably, and I think it's not even really an argument, a better roster had they just kept the pieces they had the previous year. So LeBron, the GM, if it was really him that was the driving force behind getting Russell Westbrook, I think this is one he absolutely got wrong.
I always state stats are like bikinis. While they reveal a lot, they don't reveal everything. LeBron James, Anthony Davis, you take a look at last year, roughly, if you put it in terms of stats, they missed roughly about the same amount of games that they would have this year. Now you have Dennis Schroeder, KCP. There's a lot more depth. What ultimately led to the decision that they chose Russell Westbrook over the depth? Because, you brought up a great point about the Alex Caruso thing. Now, obviously, he ended up dealing with injuries in Chicago this year, which was unforeseen, but it was often made out to be, was it Talon Horton Tucker or Alex Caruso, when in fact you could have had both of those guys and definitely stretched out the roster a little more, if you picked up DeMar DeRozan and brought back Alex and, kept Talent Horton Tucker. What ultimately led to the decision? Was it LeBron putting his foot down like, I may be here for a short time, but it's definitely going to be a good time. Let's bring in Russ because I believe we can win?
Yeah, so what ultimately created that decision for Russell Westbrook, and DeRozan would have created a host of other issues in terms of salary cap problems with being hard capped, because it would have been a sign and trade, but there still may have been some wiggle room in there. But regardless, the reason why they went with Russell Westbrook was there was concern that LeBron is going into what's going to be his age 37 season, Anthony Davis, the injury history that they would have to miss some games. And what we've seen with the Lakers is, and this has been from the moment LeBron arrived, every time LeBron comes out of the game, the team just falls to pieces. The offense just falls to pieces, and it's just a question of, can they just hold on to the lead that LeBron got them until he can get back onto the floor, and then they can go again. And a lot of times they couldn't. They would give up that lead. LeBron would come back in. The lead would go back up. It would just be this yo-yo effect. And so there were concerns about that, about, okay, if LeBron's going to take some time off, AD's going to take some time off, how are we going to navigate those waters? And ultimately they decided that they were going to need a third star. They're going to need somebody else who can do the heavy lifting for LeBron at times when he's playing in games. That's going to matter. But mostly for LeBron when he's out. and they ultimately decided to target the point guard position, which was a little bit of a question mark there. I mean, they kind of did the same thing with Dennis Schroeder, bringing in kind of a ball-dominant point guard the previous season and saying, well, he can take some of the burden off of LeBron James, and clearly that didn't work. Well, they doubled down and got an even more ball-dominant point guard in Russell Westbrook. But again, the goal was to be able to provide LeBron the breathing room to take the rest that he needs to, and it'll be okay because Russell Westbrook can run things whenever LeBron is out, and that obviously didn't work out for the Lakers this season. But that was the idea behind it.
I think the hard thing with Russell Westbrook is adapting to who he is. And when LeBron's out off the court, that's really when Russell Westbrook should take shine. That's when you get the fast-paced, moving up and down the court, transition buckets, more when LeBron's off the court to kind of, manage that lead or manage where the lead is in the game ultimately until LeBron comes back. I think there was too much where Westbrook couldn't adapt to with LeBron on the court and then realizing when and when not to take over games. I do think the ultimate move for LeBron, and correct me if I'm wrong, to prolong his career even longer, if they get a point guard in there that can take control of an offense, that can score buckets at a more efficient level, that would be ultimately the move that they should make. But where do they go from here? How do they make that move to kind of space out the offense and get more of an efficiency when LeBron's not on the court?
Yeah, from here, in terms of finding the pieces that fit, because I think you're right. I mean, look, Russell Westbrook, the idea of finding a ball handler that can take the burden off of LeBron when LeBron's not on the floor, that's one thing. The problem is Russell Westbrook's skill set doesn't fit with LeBron at all in terms of what's historically worked with him. Historically, you find guys who can really do two things primarily. Those are the guys that are going to work with LeBron, and those are guys who can defend really well and provide floor spacing, so can hit threes. And Russell Westbrook does neither of those things. Plus, he needs the ball, and it's a poor fit. So from here, for the Lakers, even if they say, well, this concept wasn't a flawed one, it just the fit wasn't right, you've got to try to find guys this offseason. You've got to try to make some moves to get back to that idea. I mean, that's essentially what won them a championship in 2020 was, look, we're going to put the ball in the hands of LeBron James. We're going to have him do what he does, and we're going to put guys around him who can defend at a high level and can knock in shots when defenses are focused on LeBron and on Anthony Davis. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's not a radical concept. So I would expect them to try to get back to that idea, that concept, this offseason, which is much, much easier said than done. There's a lot of teams that are looking for players of those skill sets, but you're probably going to have to look to move Russell Westbrook and see if you can find something there, see if you can find something on the trade market for him, even if you're just chopping up his salary into multiple parts and probably taking on longer-term deals. If you can find guys who can fit a bit better and give you those particular skill sets, and I'm talking about role players, you're not targeting stars with this, then you're probably better off in the long run. And that's the path forward to start for the Lakers. They've got to figure out first and foremost what they do with Russell Westbrook, what they do with his salary on the trade market, and then go from there in terms of building out the rest of their roster.
Now, afar from the Lakers, so, the Lakers have a way to construct their roster ultimately, but then there's LeBron James. LeBron James at this point in his career, as he gets older, it's no longer about winning the division or making the NBA championship. It's about winning the NBA championship. Is there a realistic chance that LeBron gets traded for the best of the Lakers and for LeBron to go to a team where he can ultimately compete and continue to win championships? Because whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, he keeps looking up at guys like Bill Russell and Michael Jordan and those championships that they won, and he thinks he needs to continue to win these championships to not only remain in the conversation, but surpass those people in this conversation. Is there a realistic opportunity for LeBron to get traded from this Lakers team?
I think it really depends on what LeBron wants. The Lakers have repeatedly used the phrasing partnership in regards to LeBron. So they don't look at it as an employer-employee relationship. It's a partnership. If LeBron goes to the Lakers and says, please trade me. I don't want to be here. I want to go somewhere else. And remember, he can be a free agent next summer of 2023. Right now, he would be a free agent. The Lakers will probably ask him to sign an extension, which he can sign starting August 4th. But LeBron, if he went to the Lakers and said, I would like to be traded, let's work on something, let's figure something out here, that's the scenario in which the Lakers would explore a trade. I don't think they're going to go explore a trade on their own. I think it would take LeBron coming to them. And then if that happens, and I don't think this is likely, I think LeBron loves being in L.A. I think LeBron has repeatedly said that he feels like he can win here. When this came up right around, I believe it was the All-Star break, there was immediate pushback from LeBron's camp about LeBron potentially leaving the Lakers. So I don't think that's in the cards, but you never say never in the NBA. And should something like that happen, LeBron decides, you know what, this isn't working out, I need to go somewhere else, then we're looking at maybe the nuclear option for the Lakers, where not only are you looking to move LeBron, but you could be looking at an entire divorce from Clutch Sports, which could mean putting Anthony Davis out there on the trade market as well and seeing what you could get for him. So it could be a complete reset for the Lakers if they go down that path. But again, I think that's unlikely, and I think the catalyst, what would have to happen is LeBron would have to approach the Lakers and say, please trade me. I don't think the Lakers are going to head into the offseason and say, you know what, let's just pull the plug, let's trade LeBron, and then move forward from there. I don't think that's really in their DNA. It would take LeBron asking them to do it.
And you know what? I don't blame the Lakers one bit if that's how they looked at it, because when the best player in the world says, hey, I chose you, I want to be with the Lakers, you don't sit there and go, you know what, we don't choose you, we're going to trade you. So that's one thing that I would look at from that perspective. Now, let's go back to when LeBron first came to LA with the Lakers. They had abundance of young talent. They had Josh Hart, Brandon Ingram, the list goes on and on, Lonzo Ball. These guys have gone on to have pretty decent careers since being moved on from the Lakers. From the Lakers standpoint, we talked about the LeBron standpoint. From the Lakers standpoint, do they consider it worth it if they only walk away with this one championship that, you know, some fans, not me, but some fans would argue in a bubble situation, it's not a quote unquote real championship?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is 100% worth it in my mind, and the Lakers are going to look at it as though it's worth it. I mean, we tend to get, and this is true of Lakers fans, it's true of Celtics fans as well, sitting with 17 championships. Championships are really, really hard to win. Really hard to win. If you were to ask most teams in the NBA, hey, you're going to give up what the Lakers gave up, but the trade-off is you're going to have a championship, they would say in a heartbeat, yes, we do that. It's so difficult to win a championship, and that's what the Lakers are all about. And then on top of that, you talk about having another one of the all-time greats on your roster. Now, has it gone according to plan? No, in most seasons, obviously this season being one of them, hasn't gone according to plan. But you've got a talent, the level of LeBron James, the spotlight that brings to you, the revenue that brings to your organization. Those sorts of things matter as well. But again, I go back to as soon as they won a championship, I don't discount the championship at all. As soon as they won that, that's it. Everything else is just the icing on the cake. They won a championship. They accomplished their goal. Would we have liked to have seen more? Of course. Would we have liked to have seen them be a perennial contender year in and year out? Absolutely. That's what was expected. But they got the job done. They got the championship, and so it's hard to call this a failure or not a success because these other seasons haven't gone the way they hoped.
As a Knicks fan and the crucial pain that I've dealt with over the last 20 years, in a heartbeat, 10 times over, I would trade away all of that for just one championship in the last 20 years. So, you know, you're preaching to the choir over here. Now, in honor of the 30th anniversary of White Man Can't Jump, I want to ask you, what is your favorite basketball movie of all time?
Oh, my favorite basketball movie. That one is certainly up there.
I know I put you on the spot here.
No problem. That one is up there. But I think my favorite is actually, and maybe it's not obscure, but it's Coach Carter.
Yes.
I think I really loved Coach Carter, and I did a lot of coaching myself.
Mm.
And so from that perspective, just seeing the interpersonal, the reaction and the interactions there between the players and the coach, and the positive impact the coach can make on players' lives, and all those sorts of things, that really struck a chord with me. So I'm going to have that one, even though it's probably not listed among the classics. For me personally, that was a great movie.
Me and my buddy always text back and forth, especially during the NCAA tournament time. Richmond was getting ready to pull up the upset, so I'd always text him, "Rich what?" and he'd go, "Richmond." So that's definitely up there for me. One movie that I might recommend, since you do like that, it's actually an older movie. It's from 2010. I just found it on YouTube TV. I was looking for stuff to watch, but as having a 2.5-year-old, you don't get to watch movies in complete full phrases. It was
Right.
I think it was called like Hurricane Season or something. It's got Forrest Whitaker in it, and it's about the destruction of New Orleans during the Katrina hit and him gathering up as many players as he could to ultimately push through in a basketball season and have a positive impact on not only these young lives, but on the city of New Orleans as well. So that might be something that you would be interested in as well.
Oh, all right, cool. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I'm always looking for something new like that.
Trevor Lane, I appreciate the time, and hopefully we get to talk next season on a more positive note.
That sounds great, and thank you so much for having me once again.
Absolutely. That was Trevor Lane of Lakers Nation. You can check him out on Twitter at Lakers Nation, or just follow Trevor himself at Trevor_Lane.